one might have some shoulders to it here. I can see him down there running all over, spinning. We might have a good bluegill here. What we're after, let's see, pull this up here. Make that a little easier on ourselves. Oh, there we go. Oh yeah, there we go. That's a good start. Pretty colors, that's sweet. Gotta love a big bluegill through the ice. Today we're doing a little backwoods bluegill, and me and Kobe, we walked into this lake here kind of out in the sticks, and we kind of have it all to ourselves. The lake's pretty clean, there's no holes on it. Pretty fortunate to be where we got tons of lakes where we can chase beautiful panfish like that one. We'll get this one back in here. Try and catch another one, that's fun. So as I was saying, this backwoods stuff can be an absolute blast at the beginning of the year. Right now we're fishing early ice panfish, and like I said, we're probably the first people on this lake. It's a relatively smaller lake. There we go. Just raised him a little bit. Got his buddies to come up with him. And that's something that can really help you get a few more fish on the ice too, is always ice fishing. I like to, specifically panfish too. I like, oh man, nice little gill there. Get that one quick back in here. As I was saying, when fishing, specifically panfish, when they're schooled up like this and they got a bunch of numbers, one thing I really like to do is make them chase, if they'll let you. Sometimes these fish are just super sluggish, and these ones in particular, at first they are. I'm seeing on Mega Live here that they're just kind of slowly meandering in, and then once I get their attention, I can get them to kind of chase after a little bit, which is really key to making fish just strike, really getting them aggressive, and they just get kind of mad at it. It looks like something swimming away, and they just got to hop on it, and they just can't help but eat it. So that's one thing I always like to do, is just slowly, just inch by inch. Sometimes it always varies. I mean, you can really just read the fish's attitude using your electronics, whether they really want it just rifling up, or sometimes you got to just barely, like I was doing there, you could probably saw just me barely moving my tip. We got another one coming in here. Make him chase, make him chase. There we go. Another one. There's a good little group down there. Looks like another bluegill. I can see him spinning, doing the circle of death like bluegills always do. Doesn't feel like another, feels like another average one. Oh, he's a little bit wrapped up. That's all right, there he is. Just a little one, but it's always fun when they're all grouped up like that. Catching these early ice schools of panfish, it's a blast. We'll get that one back. No, we kissed it. No, there we go. That's so fun. I don't think it's another, feels like that cookie cutter that we've been catching here, but oh, a little better. They are pretty in this lake. They've all had that super cool purple back to them. Super pretty. That's awesome. Getting one peg deer. Boop. I gotta go grab more bait. So coming into this lake today, we're mainly targeting bluegills. That's what we really expected the abundant population to be, and that's one of the things I wanted to talk about, why that kind of stood out to me. And one of the things to kind of think about when you're ice fishing during the winter is the differences between crappies and bluegills. I know I mentioned earlier that we're targeting panfish, and depending on the lake, they'll sometimes group together and you'll catch both. But there are some key differences that can help you key in more on bluegills and more on crappies when you're looking at lakes. For instance, coming out here today, we kind of came in with the mindset of coming after bluegills. Looking at this lake, it just looks like it's got really big bluegills in it. Looking at satellite imaging, as you can see behind me there, there's really beautiful cattails. It just looks like a really fertile lake. What we're doing here today specifically is we're on the edge of a basin. And that's one difference between, like I was saying, between crappies and bluegills is, on average, most times you're going to see that crappies will tend to hang out in the basins and bluegills will tend to hang out towards the edges. And that's not always the case. I mean, you'll definitely catch some bluegills out in the basin, and we'll catch crappies up on the edge. We caught one here just a little bit ago, for example. and they do blend in, but it is one difference to really pick them apart. So another rule of thumb when targeting bluegills too is that, especially when using like the Mega Live like we have here today, you can really notice that these schools of bluegills will really tend to suck to bottom compared to crappies. Crappies, on most times, they love to get high up in the water column and they'll group up out over the basins like we were talking about. But bluegills, they tend to just suck down real low to bottom. And it can oftentimes be even hard to see, which is where the Mega Live comes into play, where we can really see them just like a little rock crawling on bottom, and all of a sudden they just start coming up out of nowhere. And so those are just a couple things that I try to key in on when I want to specifically target bluegills over other panfish. So that right there is a good one. That's one thing I love about Mega Live, is that you can see the different sizes of fish and you know kind of what you're dealing with, and that can help you too sometimes trigger a bite, just because these bigger fish tend to be a lot slower, a little bit more sluggish. Plus I can see how he's acting, see his attitude, so then I can make my adjustments to how I want to jig, if I want to be aggressive, if I want to go nice and slow. There we go. Maybe a little better one. He's dogging a little bit. Always what you love to see out of those bluegills. Just don't give up. Oh yeah. Now we're talking. There we go. Sun's starting to set here. Things are starting to get a little bit more active down there. We got a lot more fish coming through. And they're all looking about that size. So I'm going to quickly get this one unhooked so I get back down there. He's got buddies waiting. That is a beautiful bluegill. Love that. So within just the past, 5-10 minutes now, it's really come to life. And that's one thing that is typically a characteristic of panfish, is that when the sun starts to set, you kind of hit that golden hour where it's almost like deer hunting in a way, where it's like you got to be in the stand for that last hour before sunset. It's kind of the same thing with panfish. That last 30 minutes of light till about half hour after light, it really just starts to come to life, and you can see it here. I mean, there's just fish everywhere on bottom. Everything, you can see the plankton starting to come up and other little bait forms starting to come up, and that's really why they start to get active. Is you can see all along bottom here, it's just jumping with all kinds of plankton and other little different bait for these bluegills and other panfish. So it's always good to stay out till that dark period, because that's when things really start to come to life. A pretty typical panfish rig, just a 27 ultralight. It's got that super soft tip, as you can probably see. I'm kind of letting them chew on it. I can see when they really got it. These bluegills are peckers at your bait, so that soft tip is really nice, just to be able to detect those really light bites. Today we're in 30 feet, and it's really nice with that deeper water. Once you're 15, 20 plus feet, to have that backbone where you can really get that good hook set after you get that soft tip, feel that light bite, and set into them, and you get a solid hook into them. Match that with 4-pound test fluorocarbon and an inline reel, just to prevent a little bit of line twist with these bluegills. They can be real picky sometimes, and panfish in general, with that bait, just because it's a smaller bait and it gets a tendency to spin sometimes. And with that inline reel and then pulling on your line like this too, that helps reduce a lot of your memory overall, so that way you don't get much line twist and the bait just looks really natural to these fish. There we go. Oh, might be another good one. See him doing the circle of death down there on the Mega Live. Come on. Needs to grow a little shoulders here. Not bad. I'll take that one. Oh. Another real beautiful bluegill. On the old tungsten and waxy approach. It's a classic that cannot be beaten. And it's really simple. All it is just threading a couple waxies on the back of that tungsten, which I do really love for panfish fishing. That tungsten jig is a classic just because it seems to always get bit, whether fish are moody, aggressive. It always seems to work, and I really like it because it sinks fast and I can get it down there. Plus you can feel your bait really well on the end of your line. When you have these light biting fish, it can help just to get that little bit more sensitivity to where you can feel your bait and feel when there's any type of difference, whether it's a tiny bite. If you lift it up on your bait, you can really tell. But one thing to always keep in mind too, especially with bluegill fishing and bluegills like this who may have never seen a bait in these backwood lakes, is to also try a different approach. Today I'm just doing this tungsten and waxy deal just because it's easy and it gets bit, and these fish aren't exactly the most aggressive from what we're seeing. But also don't be afraid to try different baits like smaller rattle baits, small jig wraps, small spoons. Those are also great ways to get big bluegills and get a little bit different look at a different bait that sometimes a lot of guys aren't using, and sometimes, like I said, these fish have never even seen those baits. So that's another way to try and get a little bit bigger bite or try and catch pressured fish. So one thing that's really nice about being able to use this Mega Live is that I'm kind of able to almost intercept these fish. Although these fish are kind of sluggish and slow moving, they're still moving along pretty good. Especially with these bluegills, that's a common thing with bluegills, is that they like to kind of move around and they're typically pretty darty. And so what's really nice is, like I was saying, I can kind of guess where I'm going to see where these bluegills are heading, and then I can hop to the hole that I have there. As you can see behind me, I've kind of drilled out a good little area here where we've seen a lot of fish. And so that allows me to be able to, once it comes to prime time like this, I can really be quiet and stealthy and hold a hole where I can see the most activity. All I got to do is just pan around, look around and see, oh, there's, 5 of them clinging right on bottom about 20 feet over there. And I tend to do a hole every 10, 15 feet and kind of almost do like a square. So that way I kind of have my little area covered. I can pan around and really target these little groups of fish as they keep swimming up and down. Coming back for seconds. There we go. What do we got here? Doesn't feel halfway horrible. Doing a little dogging. Oh, there we go. That is what we're talking about. That's a magnum bluegill. Look at how pretty that thing is. Oh, that's sweet. Jig right in the top of the mouth. That is what we came out here for. Those magnum backwoods bluegills. Let's get a quick tape measure on this one. Just on the old tungsten and waxy. Oh, you can't beat it. Gosh, that is a pretty, pretty bluegill. Gosh. And that fish, I missed him the first time there. He dumped it. I'm surprised he came back, but he charged it. That one was hungry. We're gonna put this one on the tape real quick here. Gotta be quick with it, just because it's tough on these fish to keep them cold like this for very long. She's laying flat. There's the tip there. Gosh, just over 10 3/4. That is a magnum bluegill. Gosh, pretty fish. That is a blast. These backwoods bluegills, you cannot beat that.